Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Ball is Round. I'm Hady Raphael, and tonight on the show, the Sounders showed their superiority against CF Montreal, some roster moves in Montreal, and the women's national team win in the She Believes Cup semifinal. That and a lot more on episode 174 of The Ball is Round. And I'm joined today by Eve Powell. Hey, Eve, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How can you go well after after this horrendous soccer weekend?
It was a horrendous soccer weekend, but the weather was so beautiful today. I got outside and enjoyed that, and remember that there's a little more to life than soccer. So that's how.
No, I agree, but I think both our European teams lost this weekend,
Yeah.
so it's been a very tough soccer weekend for both of
Yeah.
us. But the women's national team did win, so at least we had
Exactly.
that in
Exactly.
the on their, I think, 19th head-to-head against Brazil.
At least in
They were
19th
able
in the
to
last year, I think.
exactly in the last 3 months. No, I'm joking. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm exaggerating, but still. So first of all, let's talk about the less fun stuff.
Yeah.
And
Get it out
CF
of the way.
Montreal, get it out of the way, exactly. And I know Robbie sent us a message just before the game, just before the podcast, and he said, "Make it quick, make it quick." So you know what,
I
Robbie?
think we all share that feeling.
We're going to talk about what happened yesterday because it's very important to talk not only about the good games or the tight games, but also in the games where nothing went right, and
Yeah.
that's very important too, to analyze and to understand
Of course.
why this has happened. So
Mm-hmm.
CF Montreal, for the people that didn't watch the game or are not really aware of the result, were away in Seattle yesterday evening on Saturday, playing against the Sounders, and the Sounders won 5-0 against CF Montreal. So let's talk about that game. Let's look at the lineup that Laurent Courtois has chosen for yesterday's game, with Jonathan Sirois in goal, of course. We had, as in a three-man defense, we had George Campbell as a right center back. We had Joel Waterman as in the middle of the back three, and Joaquin Sosa with his first start as a left center back. The wingbacks were the same, with Ruan playing on the right and Lassiter playing on the left. In the midfield, big change with Samuel Piet, joined by Nathan Saliba for his first start of the season too. Up front, we had Mathieu Chouanière with Matthias Kokaro as number 10s, or if you want to, offensive midfielders, and Joseph Martinez that started as a lone striker. Now, of course, things have changed during the game, where we saw Kokaro play up front and then Martinez play behind him. So that did happen during the game, but the first draw, it was Martinez up front with Kokaro right behind him. When you saw that starting 11, quite a few changes from Laurent Courtois. What did you
Yeah.
think of it?
I was obviously really curious to see what Sosa can do as a new signing who had kind of been touted as a really interesting pickup in the off season. I thought, when George Campbell had come in against DC, he hadn't done terribly at all. I thought like it was an improved performance compared to what we'd seen, in much of 2023, short as it was. And my fear of a small sample size. So I could kind of understand a little bit why he was certainly getting a start, and especially obviously Gabriela Corbo has just put in a shift every single match since the season started. Alvarez, of course, he's kind of new to the lineup, so I can understand rotating him out as well. And obviously Nathan Saliba as well. It was interesting to see him get a start after his own interesting cameo appearance in the last match, even if it didn't go Montreal's way. I think we'd been really curious to see what I would almost want to call it, because unfortunately Kokoro started as a number 10. I wanted to almost say an all Quebecois midfield, but not quite. And so I was really curious to see, how he would do with the start, because we know that he struggled a bit to start matches at the start of 2023. So, had he improved in that regard? And then, otherwise, I thought most of the other selections were obvious.
No, exactly. Now, we did talk quite a lot about it in the last few weeks since the beginning of the season, saying that, you know what, it's nice to have the same starting 11 from one week to another, but it's important also to include other players that are going to be part of the rotation, to include them a bit more, to give them for a few starts here and there. Do you feel that the level of rotations from Laurent Courtois was adequate, or do you feel that it was a bit too much for that game? Now it's very easy to talk about it in hindsight, not knowing the final score. But do you think it was a bit too many changes from Laurent Courtois?
I overall no, because at the end of the day, that the formation was still essentially the same, and I think that's mainly what's important. And then as well, the spinal column, with Sirois, Waterman, Piet, and to a degree Mathieu Choinière as well. A lot of that remained the same, which is so important. Plus your players on the flanks who are going to support a lot of those players who came in and kind of more in the middle. They also remained consistent from the last several games. So overall, I wasn't shocked by this level of rotation. I definitely wasn't expecting the bloodbath that came. How's that?
Exactly. I don't think anybody thought that, we would lose so heavily against, a team that was last in the MLS. Yeah. As simple as that. So, it was a bit of a shock. But I do agree with you that the spinal column, like you said, was here. I just think that not having Corbo, I think, was a mistake in a way, because I think changing your back line, just having just one of the three still here, I think it's a bit too much. That's the only thing that I was worried about before the game. That's the only thing, try either Sosa or Campbell, but not both of them together. That was my only concern at that time. In the middle, no, I really liked it to see Saliba, to see Choinière play a bit higher up. I think he can be very lethal and very efficient up front. Unfortunately, it didn't help. One side that I wish we saw a bit more of rotation was on the wing backs. I really wanted to see maybe Edwards on the left, or Lassie on the right, or I don't know, but I think that could have been something that we could have I would have wanted yesterday, but you know what, it didn't happen. Let's talk about the game. We're not going to go play by play, because we don't do that anymore. We talk about the game altogether. Let's start with the goalkeeper, Jonathan Sirois. Yes, he did concede 5 goals, but how can we rate his performance? Because I don't think he was bad.
No, I don't think he was terrible. The first goal, was a golazo off a rebound from a set piece. The second goal was with a deflection, correct? Off poor Saliba, Yeah. The second goal was a penalty, and he wasn't the player who conceded the penalty. The third one, I don't think he could have come out any further to intercept anything. Truly, the fourth goal was kind of calamitous, maybe a little bit more, but still, I kind of feel like it just didn't work between him and the defense, and I don't know. It was a tough night for everyone. Obviously, it doesn't look good when you concede that many goals, but the fourth goal, the player was just so wide open to tap in, no problem. And I honestly forget what the fifth goal looked like by this point. I'm sorry.
Again, it was from the left with, I think it was Rusnak, I think, that received the
Yeah.
ball and just crossed it to Tevez, who put it in the back of the
Yeah.
net.
Okay, yeah. It was quite similar to like the fourth goal, if I'm not
Exactly.
mistaken. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, defensive positioning I think is largely what let him down on pretty much all of the goals, aside from the first two. And it's hard to blame him. Like I don't think he could have done more on the goals that were conceded. As for the others, like it's I feel like those overshadow so much of what he would have done otherwise during the game. I did think at the start he was still a little bit iffy on his distribution, trying to play short early on in the match. There were a few instances where the team did nearly find themselves in hot water and they immediately had to pass the ball back to him. So I do still think there's still room for improvement in that regard. But from a shot stopping perspective, I don't blame him for any of the goals.
Exactly. And you talked about, the communication between the goalkeeper and the
Mm-hmm.
defense. Do you feel that the fact that, there was, two changes out of
Yeah.
three, that, played a part, or,
I doubt it helped, certainly. I mean, these players have been on the road together for so long by this point, training together since January, that you would think, with the odd time off here and there for international breaks. But you would think that by now that they would all be able to communicate with each other effectively in a competitive scenario. So I do struggle to blame that. I really do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do struggle to blame that, but I feel that, something wasn't, going right in a way. So
100% agree.
it's more than just individual errors. I think it was
Yeah.
a team effort, unfortunately, that led to that big loss. Now, let's talk about that central defense. Those three central defenders with Sosa, with Waterman and Campbell. How much of this loss is their fault, and how much is, again, a team effort in a way, in your opinion?
I mean, it's it's
I
hard
love it.
because
I love
no,
it when you.
no, there were there were moments of individual error for sure,
Yeah.
100%. But at the end of the day, especially looking at say those three last goals that were conceded, it felt like the entirety of the defense was just had no idea where they were supposed to be, who they were supposed to be marking, what they were supposed to be doing, who was going to be following the guy with the ball. Like, and that to me speaks more of preparation, more so than individual errors or even communication. Because for communication, you could see it happening in an isolated incident, but not so much chronically as it did throughout the second half. So I'm more honestly inclined to put it on a larger collective issue, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Than on the individual players. I will say, obviously, the penalty, it sucked to give it up, but unfortunately, when you leave a trailing leg out like that, you're inviting basically the attacking player to make contact with you. And I can completely understand why VAR gave a penalty to
Of
Seattle.
course.
I'm surprised it wasn't called on the pitch, but I think maybe
Yeah.
the ref was like chasing the action inwards, so maybe he just didn't quite see it like being behind the action.
Now, just to defend a bit of the referee, because you see clearly Waterman trying to pull his foot away, So at one point, I don't want to be too harsh on the players because, at the end of the day, we do have reflexes, and I think that this penalty is Joel Waterman having a bad reflex and just unfortunately touching the Seattle player. Now, I do feel that individually, all three of them had an awful game.
Yeah.
But really awful game as a unit, but also individually. And when you have three central defenders having a bad game together,
it's a nightmare.
It gives you, a 5-0 loss. It's as simple as that. And I don't want to blame only the defense. I will talk about the rest of the team. But I think that mainly, that central defense is really not a central defense that I want to see again.
No, I'm good to be spared from that. I think if nothing, this outing cemented how important Gabriele Corbo is to this three-man center back. I feel like he's a lock now. Whenever he wants to be in that starting 11, I think he's going to be for the foreseeable future. Because he did come on late in the game, and obviously like it was a foregone conclusion by then. But like it was almost a relief to see him when he came on.
Yeah, exactly. He's
It
that
was reliable.
important.
It was stable.
Exactly. You're saying the right adjectives when you say reliable. I would say also consistent.
Yeah.
Because you get that consistency for Gabriele Corbo that's so important in the central defense that you don't get from the others. And again, it's the first start for Joaquin Sosa, and he did show some very interesting stuff offensively on set pieces, and we saw that that header that could have been a goal that was with a great save from Stefan Fry. But at the end of the day, you're a defender.
Yeah.
What we want from you is defense.
Yeah. Unless you're putting up Vanessa Gilles style numbers and headers on set pieces, that should be your first and foremost priority.
Exactly. So that's for the central defense. When you see the wingers, the wing backs, sorry, because I don't know, because right now I don't even call them wingers, wing backs anymore. For me, it's mostly wingers.
Yeah.
But I think also they had a terrible game.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was dismal. Ariel Lassiter, he had a really poor showing against DC. Ron was like a little bit better, but like I said, I thought he looked quite tired against DC. And that makes me even more surprised that out of all the rotation, he wasn't one of the players who was rotated. And again, that's just me judging on a screen, of course.
Of course.
But that being said, for Ariel Lassiter, it was another incredibly complicated outing. Like I felt like he was never in the position I expected or that I would want him to be in when, whether the ball was going forward or whether it was coming down in defensively. I felt almost like he was playing a separate game from his teammates. And, the passes weren't connecting, his individual efforts, the few attempts to dribble didn't come off. It was just like nothing was going to go right for him. I felt really bad, honestly.
When you think about it tactically, Eve, when you're playing against a team that uses their fullbacks that much, because Seattle really plays with their fullbacks. We saw it before the injury of Nuhutolo, but also when with the player that came in for him, Cody Baker, and on the right you had Alex Roldan that played also on the right. You expect a team that's playing with two wingbacks to really exploit the space behind those very attacking fullbacks. And we didn't see that at all.
No.
Like, unfortunately, I understand, if Lassiter and Rowan role wasn't to really defend, it's okay, but at least it's important to show something offensively. And we didn't see anything from them, but anything at all offensively. And again, that leaves us to the midfield. And those two midfielders of Saliba and Piet have to be the ones that would cover up the liability of having two wing backs.
Yeah.
Very offensive wing backs. And we didn't see that either.
No.
So what was the whole scheme of
I could not put my finger on it. Like we could sit here for the next 5 hours and I would not be able to guess what instructions Laurent Courtois had given to his team or why he persisted with leaving some of the players that he did leave out there. Although I'm sure truly anyone could have been subbed off and it wouldn't have blown my mind. That's the thing. Like they were just so absent, and so the wingbacks particularly were just so absent in the match that it was like I said, it was like they were on a different pitch entirely from their teammates, and I could not for the life of me figure out what the instruction was that had been given for them to try and do something, because it felt as though maybe they were held back in some regard.
Yeah, it did feel that they were held back in a way, but also I and we've been talking about it quite a few times in the
Mm-hmm.
last 3 weeks, because the the
Mm-hmm.
three losses, that the midfield looks completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And we saw it when it was Piet and Chouanière. We saw it even more when it was Piet and Saliba, because
Mm-hmm.
the problem is Saliba had his first outing of the season, or no, first start of the season, not really the first
Mm-hmm.
outing, but first start of the season, and he was late on every challenge.
Yeah.
Piet tried as much as he can to
But he's one
defend.
guy.
He's one guy. I think the two guys that we could not be pointed out yesterday for their lack of effort are, for me, Samuel Piet and Mathieu Chouanière, that really tried everything they could to make things work.
Mm-hmm.
The rest, for me, it's very hard to even give them the passing grade. For me, nobody deserved a passing grade, except those two. But how can you explain that lack of, how can we say it, the lack of cohesion between the two midfielders within the tactic, within the team that's
Yeah.
put into place with Laurent Courtois?
I don't know if it's maybe the occasion, of your first start of the season for Nathan Saliba maybe got the better of him. Because like you mentioned, he was late, he was losing balls, he was his passes weren't finding their target, and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure. And then of course, any time that you have to have another player compensate for other players' shortcomings, then they're leaving behind the duty that they were assigned out on the pitch, and they're trying to do 1.5 jobs, and it just doesn't work. So, I don't want to put it all on Saliba's shoulders, of course, because he's a young, developing player, and we saw him get better over the course of the 2023 season. But
Yeah.
this did remind me of one of his early 2023 matches, unfortunately. But knowing that he improved over the course of 2023, I'm certainly not like ready to write him off or anything, but
Of
by
course
any
not. Of course
means.
not.
No, I'm saying like, now that he's kind of gotten that off his shoulders, the next time he is granted a start, which might not be for a match, well, it certainly won't be next match anyway, as he did receive a red card.
Exactly.
But it might not be for a minute, but maybe he'll have a little bit less jitters in his system.
Yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree. And I don't think I think it's early. It's very early in the season, and the sample size is too small to completely write off any of the players that
Yeah.
have played yesterday. So,
Yeah.
God forbid, we're not there yet. Okay. So, very far from it right now. I think it was just a very bad showing yesterday. And,
Yeah.
this happens. But now, this cannot be repeated again.
Yeah.
How can, when you're a captain,
Mm-hmm.
and Samuel Piet is the captain of that team,
Mm-hmm.
how much responsibility, in your opinion, does a captain have when a team loses 5-0?
I think it depends on the manner of the loss. You know what I mean? Because it's not as though I felt they weren't trying. They were trying, and just absolutely nothing was working. Like they could have stayed out there, I think, all night, and it would have just kept getting worse and worse and worse, even if they had 11 players on the pitch. So I find it hard because I didn't feel, I think typically a captain is there to motivate the team, to remind them to focus, to, maybe just kind of yell at them and kind of wake them up a little bit if need be. But he's not necessarily there to be the tactician on the sidelines. That's the coach's job. Obviously, we know that they can certainly have conversations with the coach and with their teammates. But unless there's a significant stoppage in play, that's not really going to happen. So I find it hard to assign a whole lot of responsibility to Sam Piet for this one, because I feel more like it was the team selection and the tactical preparation that let the team down.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think that at one point the captain has to go and talk with his coaching staff and say, hey, guys, something's not working.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you need to make sure to make adjustments on the pitch, because during the half, the coach doesn't have time to give instructions or
No,
to
not
make
to
his
every individual
instructions very
player.
clear. And so it's the captain's job in a way.
Mhm.
So for me, not showing that improvement in game, that's what really worries me. After that game, we don't see a progression. We didn't see a progression. We even saw a regression, and we'll talk about it a bit later during the game, where the team was better in the first half than in the second.
They were.
Which for me is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Let's talk about the front three with Mathieu Choinière, Matthias Kokaro, and Joseph Martinez. Of course, Matthias Kokaro had to go off when the red card was awarded to Nathan Saliba, replaced by Victor Wanyama, which is very odd. What did you think about the performance of the front three?
I was a little bit frustrated. I was a lot bit frustrated by Joseph Martinez, unfortunately. I think had there been a bit more clinical finish applied to a couple of the early chances that Montreal had, because after about the 30th minute, they kind of didn't really have any chances. Maybe it might have been a slightly more interesting game, even if Seattle had gone on eventually to score 5 goals. So I did find that frustrating. I do prefer, I think, Kokoro further up front. I understand wanting some extra support in the midfield, in that attacking role, especially as it turned out that the back end of the midfield needed a significant amount of support. But I truly think he is way more effective. He won several fouls, which of course he does every game, which was helpful, I think, for the team as they were quite literally drowning on dry land, and at least buying them a little bit of time, a little bit more possession, just to kind of get a reprieve from the onslaught of Seattle. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. And Mathieu Choinière, I'm not sure that he really got to do a lot of number 10 work, just because of how overwhelmed the midfield was. So I don't feel like we really saw like an attacking midfield version of Mathieu Choinière last night, because it felt like he was running all over Hell's Half Acre, just trying to kind of put out a fire wherever he could, and kind of at least that front-ish half of the pitch.
Yeah, and you know what? That's exactly my assessment too. I think that Mathieu Choinière was doing too much, and he couldn't be everywhere at the same time. That was the first thing. And I completely agree with you that for me, Matthias Kokaro has to play up front. I feel that Joseph Martinez can be that player that really, not really a number 10, but he's able to play that 9.5 role, where he's able to give some good passes, create, play, with his back with his back to the goal, making sure that to protect the ball and really give a through ball afterwards. And we saw it quite a few times in the first few games, the first 3 games where he came in as a sub. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I feel that Matthias Kokaro playing that far behind, like as a number 10 or just behind the striker, for me, it removes one of his best assets, which is really pressing and putting a lot of pressure on the defense, which he can't do anymore because he's playing too far behind. And
exactly.
I think you need that, and that's what created a lot of chances in the first 3 games. So I think that was missing in a way. Now, individually, I don't think we can blame any one of the 3.
No, I mean, they had the instructions that they were given.
Exactly. And Joseph Martinez, whenever he had a chance, he tried to make something out of it. There's a couple of things that I liked from Joseph Martinez. First of all, we saw a few times where he took his shot from outside the area.
Yes.
And that I really like to see, because
you do like a shot outside the box.
Because at the end of the day, when you show that you're able to take a shot from outside of the box, the defense will come out to make sure that they block the shot. By coming out, there's space that's created. and then you can slot in a through ball, and then you create other kinds of dangers. Whenever you don't try from outside the box, then the defense knows that it's not going to happen. A shot is not going to come from here. So they're just expecting you to give a through ball or to try to connect with someone in the area, which shouldn't be always the case. So I like the diversity in the way you approach an attacking play. And that shot from outside the box, I think, is very important. And nowadays in modern soccer, we're losing that. And it's not only in Montreal. I've seen it everywhere in Europe where nobody's shooting the ball anymore, which is, for me, you're just taking off one of the tools that you have to create danger. It's as simple as that. So for the three attacking players, I don't think there's much to say unless you want to add anything else.
No, I would just say that Wellington says that Martinez was a flop yesterday and is no longer the striker he used to be. Like I said, his clinical finish definitely 100% wasn't there. Nobody had a good day at the office yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, that was just a complete write-off, and I hope that they forget about that match. I hope it's already forgotten. And I think, Hady, I mean, you kind of were of this mindset when the signing was first made, and then I think you kind of started coming around. So maybe, do you want to comment on that comment?
Yeah, I do. For me, Joseph Martinez shouldn't be a starting striker or starting striker every game.
Agreed.
I think he should be a starting striker when we have a very important game, when you need that experience up front, a bit like Kai Kamara was at the beginning of the year in 2022, where whenever we had a very important game, then he would be the main striker. But and then, he produced so much that he became that starting striker. But if Joseph Martinez produces that much, then of course he would win that starting 11, that place in the starting 11. But right now, I don't think that's the case. He shouldn't be in the starting 11, in my opinion. It should be Matthias Kokaro. We should see Mathieu Chouanière and someone else next to him in behind the striker. Now, the problem is we have too many injuries in that specific area of the pitch. Dominique Yankov, injured. Bryce Duke, really not in form. Jules-Anthony Vilsan, injured.
Mahalo
Poku, injured. You have Sunusi, but Sunusi is not going to be that player that's technically gifted. He's just going to play into space. That's not what you want, because you already have Kokaro that's playing into space, and you will only have Chouanière. So you need someone that's technically gifted, and Yankov is injured. If Yankov wasn't injured, it's his place. He should be there 100%. So I don't think he's a flop, and he was a flop yesterday, to answer Wellington's comment. I think the whole team was a flop yesterday. It's as simple as that. Moving on, let's talk about Laurent Courtois. And I think that's the main topic today. That's going to be the main topic for me. First of all, I like when I want to read a comment of Wellington, and then I'll ask you quite a few questions. He said, "It is about time we should hold Laurent Courtois accountable. Wanyama must have a chance to start." That's one of the points. But let's talk about the first part of the comment. Can we and should we hold Laurent Courtois accountable for that loss yesterday?
I think, we'd obviously talked a lot about giving like a really healthy grace period for a 6-game road trip, right?
Of course.
100%. But like looking at the match kind of in a vacuum, if you will, on its own, there were a lot of, I think, concerning things in that match. The rotation to me made sense, more or less. It really did, honestly. The amount of rotation, like I couldn't disagree with that. But when your 11 players on the pitch all have a bad day, either there was something in their food that they ate before the match, or it's a coaching issue. And I'm thinking the latter. Because I don't think Seattle is mean enough to like sabotage a team meal. So yeah, as you mentioned as well, they got worse as the match went on, which is deeply concerning because at the end of the day, it's on the coach to adjust, to motivate, to switch players in and out, whether that's substitutions or just moving them around on the pitch. It's on him, and nothing got better as the match went on, and that's problematic for sure. And then if we want to expand it out a little bit, obviously I expected like a really crappy road trip. But then Montreal was able to take 7 points in 3 matches, and now they unfortunately are ending this road trip on a 3-game losing streak. And you kind of want to see the team going in the opposite direction. Like, you could understand them losing their first 3 matches, but then they build a bit of momentum, develop a bit of cohesion, so on and so forth. I know like the West and East back and forth is not easy. But for me, like, I don't know. I think like I said, where it's on the road, I'm still willing to give some grace for sure. 100% to Laurent Courtois. I think we need to give it at least until match 10 before we say like calm down, like before we really start to prepare the panic button. But the last 3 matches have not been tremendously encouraging.
I completely agree with your assessment. Honestly, I would give a bit more than 10 games just because of the 6 games road trip.
Okay.
I would give about 12 to 15 games. That's usually I give 10 games.
Yeah.
But because of the beginning of the season having 6 games away from home, I would give a bit more. I never judge a coach before I see before I have a bigger sample size that what we have right now. It's as simple as that. That's the first thing. But I do agree with you that at one point you should realize that your team is not really responding to whatever you put in place, or that what you put in place is not adequate for whatever the opposition is offering. And at one point, it's your job to make adjustments. Now, again, he's a new coach. It's his rookie season. He's learning. That's for sure. But a 5-0 loss is a bit too much. It's a bit too much. Now, let's talk about the things that he did, okay? The beginning of the game wasn't that bad. When you think about it, it's a bit, I'm not going to say unlucky, but at one point, the first goal, it's a deflection from Nathan Saliba that lobs Jonathan Sirois, okay? And even before that, you did have some nice movements from CF Montreal. You did have, we saw that play between Saliba, Kokaro, and Juan that really liberated Juan into space with that cross that unfortunately didn't fall to Joseph Martinez. But so you've seen, some beautiful plays, some beautiful link-ups. So that was pretty good in the first half. But then you have that second goal on the penalty. So again, this is something that can happen. And again, you saw CF Montreal with that header from Joaquin Sosa in the box directly. And still there, you thought that even at 2-0, the team still had a chance to come back. I didn't feel that the team was that bad at that point. And then came halftime. And for me, whatever happened at halftime must not happen again.
Yeah.
Because the message that was provided to the players was the wrong one, or the players
did not understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, even worse. Even worse. So there's something that happened at halftime, and the lack of decision-making at halftime, and I saw so many people addressing this and saying that we all knew that Nathan Saliba had a yellow card, and a second yellow card was just waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And how do you explain that, Eve? Like,
I can't. I can't, Hady. I understand that with the benefit of sitting on our couches and stuff with the bird's eye view camera, it's maybe a little easier to see than a coach on the sideline. But like I even feel like the body language, for poor Nathan Saliba was like more and more over his head. And yeah, I don't know how that one could have gotten missed.
Yeah, exactly. And in the post game presser, I
Mm.
stayed up last night just to do the post game. I think I finished around 2 a.m. To be honest,
Oy,
it
brutal.
was crazy, a bit more than 2 a.m. But and the first thing that Laurent Courtois said, he said the loss is on me. Trying to protect and to shield his
Yeah.
players.
Yeah.
At one point, the sympathy towards
Yeah.
Laurent Courtois is gonna vanish.
Yes.
So at one point, he's not gonna have a choice but to point out whatever his players are not doing right. When do you think will come that moment, in your opinion? When do you think that? Do you think that right now that sense of Laurent Courtois is a genius is starting to disappear, to slowly disappear? That honeymoon between the fans and the coach is starting to go away? Or is it a bit too early? Or do you still see some people defending him that much?
So I think it's a little bit challenging because I suspect like having the team at home, there's going to be a little bit of a renewal of that honeymoon feeling, no matter what. So I feel like your question's like a little bit complicated in that regard because, in the context of the 6 matches that we've just seen, yes, the honeymoon is rapidly coming to an end. 100% sympathy, I think, is starting to dry up for sure. But I also think that we should, and if we don't, then we have a bigger problem to discuss, but we should see a much different team at home than what we've seen on the road. And I think like an improved home performance or two is going to regain him all of the sympathy that was lost with these 3 losses. Truly, just because I think Montreal fans are generally so attached to their players, to their coach, to their team, to their stadium, that they are going to be willing to buy back in, especially knowing kind of that there's a surplus of home games awaiting them the rest of the season, if you will.
And we saw Joel Waterman in the post game presser say, when he was asked, the coach, took it upon himself, saying that it was his mistake because his message was maybe not clear enough. That's what Laurent Courtois said. And Joel Waterman, his answer was like, nah. He said it just like that. He said, nah. We all know what he's trying to do. He's trying to put the pressure on him, but it's all on us. And I really liked what Joel Waterman answered because, and I saw a lot of people criticize what he said, but I feel that it was great. The fact that he said that we have too much talent in this team to repeat this kind of performance, and this will not happen again. Bold. For me, that was a leader talking to the media. And for me, that's what I'm expecting from Joel Waterman. A lot of people, saw that and translated it as arrogance, or translated it as, he has a big head and he's starting to think that he's too good. In my opinion, that's what I'm expecting from veteran player. That's what I'm expecting from my general in defense. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, it's a bold statement to say a big loss like that won't happen again, because certainly we've seen Montreal get blown out a few times over the course of a season, many times. So a little bit of a bold statement, but I do appreciate definitely the solidarity, I guess, with the coach, saying like, it's nice of him to do that, but like we're also to blame. So it's nice that he didn't kind of just take the freebie, if you will, from Laurent Courtois. And then, I certainly hope it won't happen again. I certainly hope it was a strong wake up call for everyone. But I don't know. You know me, I'm pessimistic Eve. So
you are pessimistic Eve. So have your we're gonna gotta come to that question a bit later. But just to comment a bit more on that. For me, even if you never know what's gonna happen, even if, yes, of course, it can happen that they get blown out again. For me, it's important that the leader of your defense shows that his resolve for that not to happen again. He can't. It was important to make a bold statement at that point, and I think, communication wise, I think that's A+ from Joel Waterman, really A+. Even if he can't give any guarantees.
Yeah,
I think it's important for us, the media, the fans also, but also his teammates, because when he comes back to the dressing room after, everybody's behind what he said. You create that cohesion by making those bold statements, and I feel that's A1, A+, A1, whatever, A1 comment from Joel Waterman. So I really like that. Now,
right on.
For CF Montreal, we do have a couple more questions that came to us. First of all, I'll start with Emil, because that's a question that he asked last week. And this week, he asked us same question as last week, because he wanted us to comment on it again. So his question last week was, earlier you said you'd be happy with 6 points in 6 games. That's what I said. And points in 3 games. And 4 points, and 7 points.
Just points in general.
And points in 3 games for Elias. CF Montreal has achieved that. If the team ends the series on 3 unsatisfactory games, does that change your assessment, or is it still a successful season start? And I think he didn't remember what you had said.
4 points.
You said 4 points. Now that we saw those 3 losses, and we saw a very heavy loss against Seattle, did your answer change from last week?
Obviously the manner of the loss at Seattle was very, very discouraging, to see kind of just the implosion, if you will, of the plucky little team that came together in the first 3 matches, to get completely smashed by the last place team in the league is definitely not good vibes. So I'm not gonna lie, like, it does put a little bit of a tarnish on the start to the season to be kind of limping in, if you will, to the home games.
Yeah, I'm not changing my comments from last week, honestly. Yes, it's a heavy loss. I still think that at the end of the day, points are what matters. 7 points from 6 away games is a decent amount of points, in my opinion. And second of all, if that loss was going to happen, I think having it happen yesterday was maybe the best timing for this kind of loss to happen.
I agree. Early in the season is better. Go ahead.
Early in the season, after you showed a few, after you collected and you were able to gain some points away from home already, the impact of that defeat, of that loss, is not as great as it could have been. Now, of course, we never want this kind of loss ever. No. But, if it has to happen, I think that was the less impactful loss that we could have had, timing-wise. That's one thing. And last but not least, I still think that fans are excited to see that team at home. And that loss that had changed the fact that they're excited to be at home and to see their team. So I think that next Saturday is going to be epic. I don't know why. I have a feeling that, the beginning of the game, of course, is going to be epic. I don't know what's going to happen on the pitch. That's completely different. I'm not here to,
you're not a psychic?
A psychic, exactly. But I feel like it's going to be nice to see the team at home in Stade Saputo.
For sure.
I love it. And of course, Tate says Saputo will be sold out on Saturday.
Yeah, I suspect it will be.
I'm pretty sure it will. And just to answer also your question, Emil, Tate did answer your question too, saying glasses half full, clear that this team as a whole was tired mentally and physically the last two games. So I don't know. I don't think that's gonna be a big problem right now. So hopefully you need to win that game. The first game in Montreal has to
Yeah.
be a win. No choice.
It probably won't be dull because it's Cincinnati, and Cincinnati versus Montreal is generally something
And
wild.
yeah, and Cincinnati has had their own share of
They've
problems.
had some ups and downs, yeah.
Exactly. Even if they did win the Shield last year, they're still not 100% yet. So that could be a good thing for CF Montreal. Second question is from Dr. Foot that says, in the end, in the attacking midfielder position, we had Alan Hamdi, Bryce Duke, Matko Miljevic, or Mathieu Choinière, who were replaced by Dominik Yankov and Bryce Duke that stayed. Is this the major flaw of this club? What do you feel, Eve?
I mean, does he mean like the current edition? Because we've had effective number 10s before, in 2021, well, not just 20, in 2022 being the last year, we had Georgi Mihailovic, who was a phenomenal number 10 and is being a phenomenal number 10 now for Colorado, sadly. But happy for him, but sad. So I definitely think it remains, if some of the players who have been signed for that position, I guess we can also kind of lump in Opoku to a degree, even though I think we'd expect him to go out wider on the pitch. But I think we'd still expect him to occupy that role, at least, if you're looking at it on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I think, yes, if the players who have shown that they are effective and can potentially be consistent in that role can't stay healthy, then it's absolutely a weak spot. Remains to be seen now that the players aren't going to be traveling quite as much, if those injury problems will sort themselves out with a little bit more regularity and consistency, in the schedules. But it will be a concern if fitness also remains a concern.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I think it was just unlucky at that position. It's as simple as that. For me, having Opoku, having Choinière, Yankov, even Sanusi, Vilsa, all those players that can play in that position. I think we have enough quality to be very good at that position. But right now, everybody's injured or in misform, and like Bryce Duke. So I don't know. I again, it's too small of a sample size to give a definite answer. But with the information that we have right now, I still didn't give up on that position yet. On the players that are playing that position yet.
Okay.
That's my honest answer. We do have I just remembered one last thing about that game. What do you think about Laurent Courtois making those changes when it was already 3-0 and giving some time on the pitch for some players that didn't have a lot of time on the pitch, like Victor Wanyama coming in for Matthias Kokaro. We saw Mason Toy coming in. We saw Rida Zuhir coming in. We saw, I think, one last one.
Gabriela Corbo and Sanusi
Ibrahim. Not Corbo, had a few minutes, but Sanusi Ibrahim. What do you think about that? Was that the right decision in your opinion, or?
I mean, it was clearly a foregone conclusion by that point, particularly after the team went down to 10 players. So, I kind of think you're almost killing two birds with one stone. You're giving some guys basically, you almost, like when you're 3-0 and 10 men, you basically have free license to almost do whatever you want on the pitch, right? Because it's very clear how the result is going to go. I'm sure somebody told them, like, do your best to win or something, but like, in all reality, they have a lot more freedom than if the match is at 0-0 and both teams are, just equally in it for a result. And conversely, the players who have been playing match in, match out, like Sam Piet, like Joel Waterman, like Mathieu Choignard, they get a few minutes extra rest, which can be a difference maker at the end of the day. So I kind of think it was killing two birds with one stone a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I really like that move. At one point,
Mhm.
you need to give them minutes, and if it can unlock something in them, why not? And at the same time, you give rest to your main assets, your main
Mhm.
tools. So why not? No, I like that too. Completely agree with you. Um, so that's for the loss 5-0 of
Yay.
CF
It's
Montreal
over.
in Seattle. It's finally over. Let's talk about the roster moves in Montreal because Olivier Renard was busy this week, and we
I
weren't really
I can't
expecting.
think of what I honestly can't think of what you're talking about. So
Okay,
go for it.
it's okay. So the first move was uh, the trade of an international roster
Oh,
slot
yeah.
to Inter Miami for 150,000.
Okay.
And the second move was Robert Torkelson loaned out to Iceland
Oh, yeah.
in Norway's second division. Until August 1st, with an opportunity for the Norwegian club to buy Robert Torkelson. So there's two things that for me
Oh,
are
okay.
very important. First of all, you're getting money from the GAM, of course, the
Mhm.
150,000.
Yeah.
Second of all, you're freeing an international spot,
Mhm.
a U22 spot, and a central defender spot.
Mhm.
Do you feel, knowing that during the week when we were at MTLUS and Olivier Renard was asked, like, are you still looking for players?
Mhm.
His answer was like, I wish I could, acquire another player. And he
Mhm.
said it as a joke, but in a way, do you
Mhm.
feel that those transactions are hiding something else? Are we
Mm.
expecting any kind of signings going forward?
I'd be a little bit surprised, honestly. Like for me, Robert Thorkelson is a player. Like I think I hope this loan move is going to be more beneficial to him than his time at Montreal has been. Because at the end of the day, I understand. Like yes, at the end of the day, he is a body who can play as a central defender. He could also play as like a left back to a degree. Um, but the number of minutes that he's seen with this club, like his departure isn't a tremendous difference maker
No, but
at
he
all.
was taking a slot, like
Yes,
a
100% agree there.
U22 slot, which
Yep,
is very, very important in MLS.
I know. Yeah.
And again, he was a central defender. We need, a depth, I think, in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see like anything happening imminently, honestly. I'd be surprised. It
Yeah.
feels like there's been a fair amount of shakeup in the off season that I almost think like by this point it would be closer to summer that a new signing would come along.
Okay. Very interesting. I
Just my
don't.
thought. I
Yeah, it's
have
okay. I have a feeling that something's gonna happen. Maybe in the summer. You're right.
mhm,
I'm not saying right now imminently, but I have a feeling that we're not gonna stay. That the roster is not completed. Like I don't feel that we have everything that we need. I
mhm,
don't think it's gonna be an attacking. In the attacking position or anything, I think
mhm,
that it's either going to be in the midfield to help Mathieu Choignard, Samuel Piet, or in central defense. That's where I think, or maybe as wing backs, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. We'll see. We'll see some changes. Uh, but right now, you do have something very interesting with the U22 slot. For
mhm,
me, that's very, very interesting because you're able to get that player, put it very fast under the cap.
mhm.
I think it only cost 150,000 on the
Roughly.
cap,
Yeah.
which is really, really interesting. So I have a feeling that Olivier Renard and Vasily Grimanzidis are really preparing something for us. And just to talk about Robert Torkelson, just to because you did talk about him not being that important in a roster. I just want to underline that in a way with a few stats. This guy played 20 games in 4 years. totaling
Most of which
300
were Canadian Championship.
totaling 383 minutes in 4
Oh,
years. How bad of an investment was that?
that's really sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and talking about Dr. Foot that asked the question about saying Ahmed Hamdi, he did score his first goal today. By the way, Ahmed Hamdi, a beautiful goal in the Egyptian league. By the way, so yeah, so let's wait and see if we're gonna see any player coming. I have a feeling. I have a feeling that we're gonna see a trade within MLS. Maybe Victor Wanyama going somewhere, and us acquiring one or two players. I have that. I don't know why. I have that feeling inside of me
Okay.
saying, something's gonna happen. I don't know why.
Okay.
So
Fair
let's wait and
enough.
see.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see. Moving on. Last but not least, the women's national team win in the She Believes Cup semifinal
Yeah.
and qualify to the final. Now, for the people that don't really know the women's game, being in the semifinal of the She Believes Cup is the first game, so it's not like they won.
How the format changed this year.
Exactly. It's not like they won like 5 games to be in the semifinal.
Yes.
So the first game was the semifinal. But still, winning against, can we call them rivals now, Brazil, with the amount of times that we played against them?
There were moments in the match yesterday that felt a little spicy. So I think we're coming close.
Coming close to being rivals.
Yeah.
A win on penalties, a 1-1 draw on that game, and a win on the penalties. Just a feeling that I have every time that the women's win something, it's always on penalties. It's never a big win. It's never something a strong statement. It's always, they won. It's always in penalties, or a 1-0 was a scrappy goal. Do you feel that that's a good way of advancing and going forward, or do you feel that you miss that 2-3 4-0 4-0 wins?
Well, I think given how disastrous their last penalty shootout had been at the W Gold Cup, I kind of think like it was almost ideal for this match to also go to a shootout where the penalties were far better taken. Obviously, the quality of the pitch in that match against the US back at the W Gold Cup, maybe that contributed. I don't know. But I almost think like the fact that they were able, like the very next match that they played following that unfortunate loss by penalties, it was great to have penalties again, just to prove that you can take them better. And to prove that you can do better, you can advance, like that they clearly practiced and they clearly, moved on from the tactic of we're not all going to shoot at the same spot because that clearly was a massive fail. So I understand like where you're coming from in theory, but in this regard, I think it was really, really nice just to kind of exercise that demon.
No, I completely agree with you. Now, I did, just for the people that didn't know, so we won in penalty 4-2, but the penalty shootout didn't start very well with Ashley Lawrence really missing her penalty, and Marta, on the other hand, also missing hers.
But that's a great shootout for Kaylin Sheridan. How often do you get to say, I saved one of Marta's penalties?
Of course. It's always very important. But then Adriana Leon, Jade Rose, Simi Woodrow, and Julia Grosso scored theirs. On the other end, it was Antonia that missed her penalty, even if Tarsian and Christian did score theirs. So 4-2. But let's look at the starting 11 that Beth Friesman had chosen for that game. We talked a lot about her choices in the previous games, and even in the previous game against the US. This time around, she had Kaylin Sheridan as the starting goalkeeper. Behind, we had Kadisha Buchanan, Jade Rose, and Vanessa Gilles as the 3 center backs. On the right, we had Ashley Lawrence. On the left, we had Janine Becky, which is very particular. Then we had in the midfield, we had Fleming. And weirdly enough, it seems like Jordan Heidema was in that midfield next
Yeah.
to Fleming. And then up front, we had Leon on the right, Lacasse on the left, and up front, we had Deanne Rose. Tell me all about that lineup, because honestly, when I saw it, I was like,
Yeah.
eh.
I think it wound up like looking a little bit more diamondy on the pitch. Like,
Yeah.
then you can imagine like Jordan Heidema being flat next to, Jessie Fleming. So yeah, I think like it wasn't like a 4-4-2. It was more like a diamond in the middle.
Like a 3-4, 3-4, 3-5-2.
3. Yeah. I think it wound up looking closer to that. Yeah. For the time that they were in possession.
With Rose and Leon playing up front? Okay. And Lacasse playing as a left wing back, in a way?
Yeah, that's how I saw it. But maybe I'm wrong, believe me. But anyway, I digress. I obviously it was massive to see Janine Becky back in the starting 11. It's been over a year since her injury that kept her out of the Women's World Cup, and as every single competition that unfortunately the women's national team played since March of 2023. So to have her back was wonderful and amazing, and I was not surprised at all to see her start because of how important she's been to this team historically. Otherwise, though, I wasn't terribly surprised by any of the selections that were made. They all come from players who I think are in relative form, at least the European-based players for sure. And of course, now with the NWSL having started back up as well, that means that the American-based players are also off to at least a good start this season as well, even if their teams aren't necessarily all doing as excellently. So no surprise, just super happy to see Janine Becky finally back.
Yeah, and she was very very interesting and very lively during the game, Janine Becky. But before we talk about her in particular, let's talk about the injury crisis that has happened in the squad, because no Quinn. There's so many players missing. No Nichelle Prince, no
Olivia Smith,
no Lisiane Proulx, like so many players really missing in that roster. And Beth Friesen had to make sure to make those changes very quick. We saw Maria Spinalidou being called up, Emma Regan being called up, Anna Karpenko, there's a third goalkeeper. So how do you feel that those injuries unbalance the team in a way?
Perhaps a little bit. Perhaps a little bit. I think certainly there's enough firepower up top across the front line that a player like Olivia Smith, and especially with the form Maria Spinalidou has been in, I think that on the attacking end, it's not so bad. Obviously, your third goalkeeper, you don't expect a change of third goalkeeper to have a tremendous impact either. I do think, although I think Quinn truly plays a unique position with this team, and I think that their ball conserving ability, their passing range, and just kind of that column, if you will, in front of the defense, that protective shield that they play, is a unique role that there isn't really another midfielder on the team who can compensate for that. So I kind of think that's mainly where the effect would be felt. However, that being said, I think Simi Awujo is developing into a tremendously interesting central midfielder, and so I feel like she has a lot to benefit from Quinn's absence. Unfortunately, she didn't get to start, but she did come into the match yesterday. And again, I think I've said it every single match she's played. For me, she is a breath of fresh air to this team. And I am so excited that even though she is a dual national, she is ours.
No, I completely agree with you. I think and we talked about it quite a few times, even after the Gold Cup, saying that it's time for her to come and take that position and make it hers. I I feel that, just that semifinal proved how ready she is
Mm-hmm.
in a way to be in that starting 11. At
Mm-hmm.
one point, we thought that it was going to be Julia Grosso, but I feel that Simeo Wujo, even if Julia Grosso had a good showing also
Yep.
yesterday and, scored the winning penalty in
Yeah.
the end, Simeo Wujo, I think, is becoming that complete player and that force in the midfield that the Canadian women's national team is craving for
Very
next to
much. Yeah.
Jessie Fleming.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel very much like she's an added element on. For me, she's a true number 8. Like, she can, she can be creative. She can also be protective. She can drive forward, but she also comes back when the time is appropriate. She's almost I almost see her as like a regista to a degree. I really like her.
Yeah, Regista usually stays in the back and don't really dribble with the
Yeah,
ball. I think that she has a bit more. She's pretty good at breaking lines with her dribble
true.
to really push
Okay.
through and push forward. Than a Regista that really stays in the back and really plays a bit more. A bit the Regista
Distribution.
a bit like
Yeah.
Busquets or Xavi.
Yeah.
This is the kind of players that are usually Registas, but or Andrea Pirlo. In his days. So, but yeah, no, I do agree that she's becoming a force. Completely, I agree with that.
And she
Let's
only
talk about
plays NCAA. She's not even pro yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a bit. Yeah, Olivia Smith just joined the pro world, so
Yeah.
Also, she was in the NCAA before, but yeah, I think hopefully we'll see her with the pro team pretty soon. But let's talk about Janine Becky and how good she was in that game. We saw how much she really wanted to be a part of this team. And I think in the first half, she was everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I felt like she was trying to do a year's worth of running.
Exactly.
To make up for her time away.
100%. 100%. And that was, I think, very, very interesting. And if you had a player that really disappointed you in a way yesterday, who would you choose if you? I have two in mind, but
I'm gonna pick Ashley Lawrence, which always surprises me.
Oh wow!
When I pick her,
interesting.
I felt like she had a quieter match than usual. Obviously, unfortunately, the penalty. I'm kind of not even taking that into account, really. But I felt like she had a much quieter match than yesterday. Yesterday than we typically know her for. I didn't see that she was terribly involved in much attacking build-up play, which we know that she can deliver like such a sumptuous cross. And of course, there was a lot of heading ability available in this team. And there was just a lot of the time where I found myself asking, why don't we try going through the right and going through Ashley Lawrence instead? Because it felt like Canada was trying to lean a lot more on the left or through the middle for their attacks, but not nearly as much on the right. And I'm not quite sure why. And maybe that's why I'm kind of thinking that Ashley Lawrence didn't have a great game, is just because the team didn't play as much through her side.
But I think on the sides, it was a bit, on the wings, it was a bit tough because even Chloe Lacasse was a bit.
She didn't have a fantastic day, but yeah.
Exactly. For me, there's two players that I wanted to point out.
Okay.
And for me was Jordan Heidema and Adriana Leon. I think Adriana Leon, since the final of the Gold Cup, we're missing the Leon that was really confident in a way. And Jordan Heidema, I feel that every time she plays, even if there are some games where she was very good, most of the time she comes out flat.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Jordan Heidema a lot, and she's still so young as a player. She's only about 23 years old. But she's been in the in the starting 11. She's certainly been in the senior national team for so long now. That
she started at 17.
Exactly.
So 5 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of frustrating because when somebody's like been in the national team setup for so long, I think you kind of expect them to have like all those competencies, but then you look at just how young she is as a player and how early in her career she actually is. And there's kind of a discord, I think, between those two things, because there are moments like where I feel like she could be more bold and more daring and more brave and like put herself into, even if it's a risk of an offside or a risk of, being wildly off target or something like that. I feel like sometimes she holds herself back almost a little bit. And she's just not quite there.
No, I agree with you. I do think that she holds herself back a lot, honestly. And Adrielle Leon, what did you feel about her
There
performance?
were some moments of really good footwork of hers that I liked in and around the Brazil 18-yard box, which I thought showed a degree of confidence that you're willing to take players on the dribble. There weren't a ton of them necessarily. But I wouldn't say like she stuck out like a sore thumb or anything to me. Like I wouldn't have signaled her out on like even maybe my 3 players who I would have said like, eh.
Who impressed you in that game? If you had
Jessie
to choose them?
Fleming.
Oh, she's so good. She's so good.
No, this game was because honestly, Canada did not have a great first half.
Yeah.
Really against Brazil. And to see the amount of dropping deep that she was doing to support the midfield, to support the defense when Brazil was really turning it up a notch, because I feel like Canada was a bit destabilized after they gave up that penalty and Brazil took the lead. Just to see the work rate of Jessie Fleming running all over that pitch. Like I would love to know how many kilometers she ran yesterday. And obviously, of course, the cross that she delivered on the free kick for Vanessa Gilles to score the equalizing header. It was such a well-weighted, perfect cross. It was as though, she had the ball on a string connected to Vanessa Gilles' head or something. It was, for me, it was honestly a true captain's performance from Jessie Fleming. And it was made abundantly clear why she wears the armband.
Now, you talked about the first half.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed that it was very confusing for the players too, and it wasn't really clear of they seemed lost on the pitch in a way where they didn't know their roles, and sometimes we saw even Jade Rose being completely left alone on the right flank with nobody in front of her. Do you feel that the tactical changes made by Beth Priestman were a bit confusing?
Yeah, I do. I honestly do think that they were, because I tried to figure out what like who was out of place and where and why and stuff, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I do think that Bev Priestman corrected a lot of it with the substitution of Simi Awujo for Janine Becky, because Simi Awujo went more into the central midfield, because I did feel like poor Jessie Fleming was trying to do the work of like 10 players in the midfield in the first half. And I agree definitely that the first half was strange. Definitely I think we saw Jordan Heidema a lot deeper than we're used to seeing her, and maybe than she's used to seeing herself as well. And tried it. It definitely didn't work. Let's maybe not try that one again. But the second half was I think drastically improved.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the substitutions were also effective in the second half. Go for it.
Yeah, no, the substitutions, and that was my next point, with Simi Awujo coming in for Janine Becky, Bianca Saint-Georges coming from Diane Rose, and then you had Julia Grosso for Chloe Lacasse at the 76th minute. And finally, that was Evelyn Fian on the 84th that came in for Jordan Heidema. So talk to me about, those substitutions, and what did you like about those substitutions?
I think we talked about Simi Awujo a fair bit. So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Bianca Saint-Georges, I think the important part was, Diane Rose, unfortunately, she can't contribute quite as much defensively as is needed. That's just not her role. That's not her bread and butter. So Bianca Saint-Georges obviously is a defender first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so, certainly I think it was worthwhile to provide some of that support to the defenders, especially as they were kind of adjusting it, and as Canada was trying to throw as many of their attacking and midfield players forward as they could to try to create the equalizer. For me, that kind of balanced out the attacking efforts that Canada was making. Julia Grosso, I mean, we talked about her a little bit as well. She is a very classy player. She's very refined. She has, wonderful technique, wonderful passing. I think, like, she's had a lot of ups and downs with injury this season. And so that consistency hasn't necessarily been there for her, unfortunately. And I think that sometimes shows, but I wouldn't say like she put a foot out of place or anything like that when she came on for the last 15 minutes or so of the match. And Evelyn Viens, it was kind of like a short cameo. And by that point, I think
5 minutes.
and I think both teams were like kind of understanding where things were going to go as well by the time that she came on.
Yeah. And it's a bit weird to not have extra time, I think.
I agree. But I understand just due to the condensed nature of the tournament, if you will.
It's 2 games. It's 2 games.
Well, I don't know what the hell. What do you call it?
Yeah, it's 2 games, and it is a tournament, but it's still 2 games, and you're preparing for the Olympics. Like, come on, let the players play.
Yeah, I don't know what the rationale behind that is at all.
That's a bit weird.
Speaking of weird subs, though.
Yeah.
The weirdest sub of all was made by Brazil, who subbed their goalkeeper right at the death. I would assume for the penalty shootout, despite their goalkeeper who started did go down with an injury, but not sure if that was a tactical injury or an actual injury. But clearly didn't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
and what I found that move to be rather baffling.
No, it does happen. It happens.
No, it does. We've seen it for sure, but
again.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the 2014 Gold Cup, like the Netherlands. Yeah.
I don't know. It happens in the men's game also. So I don't know.
Yeah. No. That's the one I was thinking of. Was the men's game.
Oh, the men's game. Okay. Yeah. It's a tactic. It didn't work for them.
No.
Let's be happy about it.
True story.
And one last thing about the women's national team that I think is worthwhile to mention is that they're going to be able to play another game against the US.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be, on a pitch that's not completely
oh my God,
soaked.
I hope.
And
I have to check the weather forecast.
How important is that game for that team ahead of the Olympics?
I think it's huge. It's obviously their biggest rival. I think it's been a minute now since Canada last beat the US. In fact, it was at the Olympics, I believe, is the last time Canada beat the US. So certainly anytime I think that you're playing your biggest rival, of course you want to beat them. And as well, just imagine the positive vibe that gives you going into the Olympics if you're able to pull that off. The way that the W Gold Cup final, their last match that they played, or sorry, semifinal, the last match that they played against each other, it wasn't really a match. I mean, I'm sorry, that was 2 hours of slugging around in the mud.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is hopefully going to be a much more competitive and actual soccer match, and that they're going to hopefully not get their hearts broken by penalty kicks again, and that if it does go to a shootout, that they have the chance to prove that they're capable.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to play a game against a very good opponent ahead of the Olympics. So that's also very important. I think the result is not that important. If they win, that's very good. If they lose,
it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. So
I think a win is hugely beneficial, but I think a loss is not terribly detrimental.
Exactly. So we'll see. Of course, we'll be watching the game that's gonna happen on Tuesday at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Canada against USA, final of the She Believes Cup. In the third place, it's going to be Brazil against Japan. The US didn't have a very easy game against Japan. I think they won 3-1, with Japan really scoring the first goal and making it tough on them. So it's gonna be fun to watch. I think that game on Tuesday. So hopefully with a Canadian win, and of course we'll be here next week to talk about this 100%. That's it for the women's national team. Let's move to our social media segment.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't realize you were going to keep talking.
Don't worry. So we do have a few tweets. Let's start with the first one, and it's from Steve. Henry and Lampard are not what we need. They were excellent players, not coaches. Henry was terrible in Montreal and Monaco. If he was so good, he'd be coaching. Who can push this team higher than they've ever been? Eve, do you agree with that statement from Steve about Thierry Henry and, of course, Frank Lampard? Because there are some rumors that Frank Lampard is one of the top targets from the Canadian men's national team to be the next head coach of that team. But the assessment of Steve, do you agree with it?
By and large, yeah, I don't think that they would be the right fit, either of them. Thierry Henry definitely has a old school player management style. I would describe it, perhaps. Obviously the environment's a little bit different in a national team versus in a club when you're together day in and day out. But I think it's hard to be so early in your coaching career and take on a national team just because, again, you don't have that day in, day out experience of developing your tactics and preparation and so on. And I just never liked the football that Frank Lampard played with, any of the teams that I saw him coach in the Premier League. I wasn't there for it. I found it to be rather negative. I found it to be rather tentative and hesitant, even though, he was playing with one of the highest wage bills in the league when he was playing with Chelsea. And that's not what I'd want to see. I would hope to have somebody with a little more experience in the national team under their belt, just because the circumstances are so much different than a club team.
Yeah, I agree with you on the last part that I would like to have someone with a bit more international experience. Now, where I don't agree with Steve and yourself is Thierry Henry. For me, Thierry Henry wasn't terrible at all in Montreal. Not at all. I think he did a very good job with Montreal. And he's one of the reasons why Nancy was able to become the coach that he became. And I think that he set the platform to Wilfried Nancy, Thierry Henry, but also, even in Monaco, I'm someone that follows Ligue 1 very, very closely. He was very, very unlucky. He had like 12 players injured for the season during that stint. So I wouldn't really, judge him on his Monaco stint. And right now he is coaching, by the way. He's coaching the French national team U23 that are going to participate in the Olympics on the men's side. And he's doing very, very well with the French national team, the U23. So
I suspect he has a better budget. I suspect he has more of a budget to work with.
With the U23, not that much.
No,
but he does
maybe
have a budget,
not.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, I think that he would be a good fit for the Canadian men's national team, in my opinion, Thierry Henry. But I don't think we do have the money to sign him.
No.
But I completely agree with your assessment on Frank Lampard. Nah, not the right man for this job.
No.
Not at all. And again, I really didn't like what I saw from him as a coach. So, yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Moving on, second tweet from Felice. Can't blame CF Montreal for being flat. They need a solution that does not involve playing the first 2 months of the season on the road, but they also have obvious discipline problems, and the coach has done a poor job of rotating his bench. We did talk about the coach quite a lot, so no need to come back on that. What do you feel about, CF Montreal being flat because there's no solution that does not involve playing the first 2 months of the season on the road? Do you feel that could be an excuse for CF Montreal?
I mean, yes and no, because obviously their circumstances are what they are. unless climate change swings like that far in the direction, it looks like certainly for the foreseeable future, Montreal is going to have a lengthy road trip ahead of them to start their seasons. It's like kind of a downer. It's kind of, for a fan who is not die hard, it's kind of like, well, why do I tune into the first 6 matches or 5 matches, however, many they end up? Well, why do I bother watching? Because they're probably going to lose at least half of them. It's kind of a downer, kind of an excuse, but like I understand the logic of where Felice is coming from.
Yeah, I agree with you, with him too. And also, it's a question I asked Gabriel Gervais, during the presser after the fans evening on Tuesday, and I'm like, if you win the Canadian Championship, where are you going to play in the Champions League? And his answer was like, we're looking for options, so they don't even know where they're going to play. So I think that becomes a problem. Yeah, that becomes a big problem. So let's wait.
Yes, because we saw Port Cavalry, for example, had to go all the way out to Vancouver. I can't imagine I can't imagine Montreal fans tolerating it if Montreal had to go to.
I don't think they would have a choice.
I don't even know where the hell.
I feel that they'll play in the US.
Yeah.
Which is very, very bad. So moving on. Third tweet. It's from Kane. Bien sûr, we're going to give Seattle their first win. And that's especially for you, Eve. The fellow pessimist, exactly. It's so weird, but we've seen it time and time and time again from CF Montreal or the Montreal Impact beforehand. Falling against the team that is in a very poor run of form and, launching their season in a way. We saw it a few years back with Philadelphia, with the Union. We saw it with DC United. We saw it with quite a few teams. What is up with that? Like, why are we that dynamo team?
It's like the opposite of a boogeyman.
Exactly. Crazy.
I truly can't explain it. Like, for me, there's no rational explanation because on paper, a team is in such bad form. Like, why? And it's under so many different coaches, so many different players, different tactics. There's like nothing except for the fact that they are Montreal. That's the only consistent piece amongst all this.
The French language.
Language. Okay.
Whatever. I don't know. It's very weird.
I don't know. But,
just I thought that this tweet was very funny, so I wanted to address it to you.
Yeah.
Fourth tweet. It's from Westband for being right. Awujo was a force when subbed in. She's playing with more and more confidence. Just to say that we're not the only ones seeing Simi Awujo being that force in the midfield. So I don't think there's much to say because we did talk about Simi Awujo. We said it, yeah. Moving on, next tweet is from Andre Schaffner. Not opposed to a 4-4-2 diamond, but you need to use the right personnel, as in any tactical formation. The first half of this Brazil was such a mismatch of personnel to the formation used that it was bound to fail. When you talk about personnel in a 4-4-2 diamond, what would be your starting 11, Eve, if you had to choose a 4-4-2 diamond for that women's national team?
Ashley Lawrence was right back. Vanessa Gilles and Kadish Buchanan as the center back pairing. As the left back, I'm always iffy on this one. Maybe Gabrielle Carl, because I feel like she is a little bit more old school in her backism, if you will.
Okay.
Then in the midfield, you know what? Perhaps put Quinn so that you can have Simi Awujo and Jessie Fleming play together. I would really like that. So I've almost made it. I'm at 7, I think. I think I need 3 more players.
Yeah, you still need
I need my attacking midfielder. Yeah.
Exactly. And
my 2 strikers. For my attacking midfielder, okay, maybe I'll move Jessie Fleming up to true attacking midfielder because I think Simi Awujo can play an 8. And perhaps Julia Grosso could also play with her at the 8 spot. I could get on board with that. And then we'll move Jessie Fleming up to the attacking midfielder spot. And the 2 strikers, I don't know. Adriana Leon has been in really good form for Canada. You know, yes, the outing against Brazil wasn't her best match, but she did score one of the penalties. And like I said, I liked some of her interesting footwork. So I'm going to keep her as one of the 2 striking options. And as the other striking option, I am just going to captain my hype train, and I will say Evelyne Bien.
Okay. Love it. Love it. The only thing is, for me, we need to see Chloe Lacasse in that starting 11. So,
yeah.
And, in a 4-4-2 diamond, unless you're playing, a very wide
yeah.
diamond with, 2 wingers. And at that point, I would put Quinn with Lacasse and Becky. Lacasse is a left winger. Becky as a right winger. Fleming up front. And then you have Leon and Vian up front. I think that could be very interesting. But at that point, Owujo and Grosso will be on the bench. I think,
it's hard.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Eve, I think I'm ready in that the bottom part of the diamond. I think I'm ready to see Owujo replace Quinn. As simple as that. I feel that she has everything it takes to play that number 6 position, even if she's, I think, better as a number 8. But I think she has everything it takes to play that 6th position. And now,
I think I just like for her to have more freedom as a number 8.
Yeah, but if you're playing a diamond,
I know.
It's either you choose to play with 2 8s and 1 6, but then you forget Becky and Lacasse. Which I don't think is the right decision, in my opinion. I would love to have. I think Lacasse is doing so good at Arsenal. That song that she had is so amazing.
Cute. Yeah.
So I don't know. I have trouble having the women's national team without Lacasse in it. So I don't know. Moving on with the next tweet. It's from Markham. He says, "We are going to have a great season at Stade Saputo. I guarantee it to you. Road games, whatever. Always difficult. So what?"
That's the anti-pessimist.
Exactly. And that's again for you, Eve, because I wanted to give you those two clashes of ideas. Exactly. So what do you feel about, the optimistic gap?
I don't know. I don't know what it's like to have that feeling.
Love it. But you know what? I'm a bit in the middle between the two. Honestly, I'm not pessimistic. I'm not that optimistic. But I feel that we're going to have some awesome games at home. I do agree. I do agree that I feel that we're going to see some awesome games. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence. Again, we'll see in maybe 6 to 7 games. We'll be able to assess exactly what's going on with that team and where we should get our hopes at that point. So let's wait and see. Last but not least, Pop Sport. As we said last week, we're always going to give our predictions. Montreal, CF Montreal against Cincinnati in Stade Saputo. Predictions, Eve.
I'm going to say a 2-2 draw.
Wow. I'm saying a 2-1 win.
Okay.
For CF Montreal. I think that last week I was the only one that predicted a loss. You said a draw, and Elias said a win. I predicted a draw, but a short draw. This time around, I'm predicting a win. You're predicting a draw. Unfortunately, Elias is not with us today. Pretty sure he would predict a win.
Probably.
Always does. So this is it, I think, from us with the Pops board and with The Ball is Round. Hope you guys liked our episode today. Don't forget, guys, our content is always going to be free, but if you want to help us grow the product, you want to help us and encourage us, join our Patreon page, and of course, we'll make sure to use that money to have a better episode and to have a better product going forward. That's it for tonight. See you next week for episode 175 of The Ball is Round.